The failing biofilter. The air on the battlefield was heavy and poisonous, a toxic fog that burned the lungs and made every breath a struggle. The human soldier Ethan Cole adjusted the cracked mask strapped across his face. The biofilter hissed weakly, its red warning lights blinking. He knew it was failing, and he had only minutes left. He crouched behind a pile of broken metal, the remains of alien war machines. His chest rose and fell in ragged breaths. Each inhale felt like fire, each exhale like knives. Around him the war raged, the sky lit by burning ships and plasma fire. But Ethan's mind was fixed on survival. He was alone, cut off from his unit. His only hope was to find shelter or a miracle. Through the haze his eyes caught movement. A figure stumbled across the battlefield. Tall, armored in silver plates glowing with strange symbols. She was not human, she was an alien warrior. One of the Valkyrie, a proud species who had once looked down on humans. Her steps faltered, her body trembling, and Ethan saw the sharp trail of blood she left on the ground. She was wounded, weak and surrounded by enemy drones. The drones hovered like vultures, scanning her, preparing their final strike. Their weapons hummed, glowing brighter in moments. They would kill her. Ethan clenched his fists. His training told him to stay hidden, save his last breath for himself. His mind screamed to wait, but his heart whispered louder. He thought of all the stories he had heard of the Valkyrie. Proud, unbending, calling humans fragile and expendable. Yet here she was, helpless, abandoned by her kind. Ethan's biofilter wheezed. His time almost gone. He looked at the broken mask, then at the alien warrior. "This is it," he muttered under his breath. His voice cracked, his lungs burned. Without another thought, Ethan charged from cover. Plasma bolts hissed past his shoulders as the drones locked onto him. He raised his rifle, his hand steady despite his failing strength. Each shot from his weapon shattered a drone in sparks of fire. He moved with the desperation of a man who knew his clock was running out. The alien warrior lifted her head, her eyes widened in disbelief. A human was standing between her and death. He shouted at her, his voice hoarse. "Move! Get down!" She stumbled back, pressing against the broken stones. The drones swarmed, 3, 4, 5 of them. Ethan shot 2 from the air, but the mask cracked again. A hiss of poisonous gas slipped inside. He coughed violently, his chest seizing, his vision blurred. His body screamed at him to stop, to run, but he stood firm. The alien tried to rise, but her leg collapsed under her. Her armor flickered, its energy shields broken. She reached for her blade, but her hands shook too much to grip it. All she could do was watch this strange human fight for her life. Another drone swooped low, aiming for her heart. Ethan stepped into its path, his rifle clicked empty. No more shots. With a growl, he swung the rifle like a club. Smashing the drone to the ground, sparks flew. His arms ached. His breath rattled. The alien gasped, her voice breaking. "Why? Why would you do this?" Her language was rough but clear. Her kind never expected humans to risk themselves for a Valkyrie. Ethan turned to her, his mask leaking, his lips pale. He forced a smile through pain-carved lines across his face. "Because no one deserves to die alone," he whispered. Another drone dived, Ethan's knees buckled. But he still raised the broken rifle. He struck it aside, his body trembling. His breath came in short, shallow gasps. The biofilter gave one final sputter. Then silence, the lights on the mask went dark. Ethan fell to one knee. His chest convulsed as the toxic air rushed into him. His lungs burned like acid. His vision darkened around the edges. But even as his body betrayed him, his eyes stayed on the alien warrior. His last strength poured into keeping himself between her and death. The alien warrior, bloodied and weak, stared at him with wide eyes. In her culture, to share your final breath for another was the highest honor. Yet this human, this fragile being, had given his life freely for her. The last drone prepared to strike. The alien reached for her blade again, her heart burning with a fire she had not felt in years. Her weakness faded, replaced by fury. She swore silently that his sacrifice would not be meaningless. Ethan collapsed onto the stones, his body shaking, his eyes half closed. His lips moved, but no sound came. The alien warrior leaned close, hearing his whisper carried by the smallest breath. "Leave," he said, his voice barely there. The battlefield roared, the fog pressed down, and Ethan Cole, the human soldier with a failing biofilter, gave his final breath not for himself, but for the alien warrior he had chosen to save. A desperate choice, The battlefield was silent for a moment, broken only by the crackle of fire and the faint hum of enemy drones above. Ethan lay on the ground, his body heavy, his breath gone. His mask was broken, the biofilter useless, and the toxic air burned his lungs like fire. Yet his eyes, half open and dim, stayed fixed on the alien warrior he had chosen to protect. The Valkyrie warrior's name was Soraya. Her silver armor was dented, her leg bleeding, her strength nearly gone. But when she looked at the human who had stood before death for her, something inside her shifted. No one, not even her own kind, had ever done such a thing. Her people believed humans were fragile, selfish, and weak. Yet this man had given everything without hesitation. The enemy drones hovered closer, scanning, ready to finish their mission. Soraya's blade slipped from her hand. Her vision blurred. She knew she could not win alone. She whispered in her own language words of fury and promise, not today. Not while he still breathes. With shaking hands, she dragged herself forward. Her arm hooked under Ethan's shoulder. Her muscles screamed. But she pulled him toward the ruins nearby. The drones fired, plasma bolts searing the ground around her. Sparks showered her armor, stone crumbled, still she moved. Her teeth clenched against the pain. Ethan groaned weakly. His body was limp, his breath shallow. Each gasp rattled in his chest. His eyes flickered open for a second. He saw her struggling to pull him. "Leave me," he whispered. His voice was rough, broken. "Save yourself," but Soraya snarled. Shaking her head, her voice was low and fierce. "You gave me your breath, human, I will not waste it." She dragged him behind a wall of shattered steel. The ruins offered little cover, but it was enough to shield them for a moment. She pressed her hand against the wound in her leg, blood seeping between her fingers. Her body trembled with exhaustion, but she looked at him, this strange human soldier who had risked everything, and she felt something new, something her people rarely allowed themselves to feel. Respect. The drones circled, scanning, searching for movement. Soraya gripped her blade tightly. Her leg throbbed, but she forced herself to rise. She could barely stand, but she would fight. She would not let his sacrifice end here. Ethan tried to push himself up. His arms shook, his lungs clawed for air. His vision was fog, his hand brushed hers. Cold and weak, he wanted to speak, to tell her he was ready to fight again. But his breath failed him. His lips moved without sound. Soraya understood. She placed her hand over his chest, steadying him. "Do not waste strength," she said. "I will fight for us both." The hum of the drones grew louder. They had found their trail. Plasma fire struck the ruins, stone and dust falling around them. Soraya lifted her blade, the glow of its edge cutting through the smoke. Her body screamed for rest, but her spirit burned with a new fire. The first drone swooped, its weapon charged. Soraya swung, steel met steel, sparks exploded as she struck it from the air. Her blade cut deep, splitting its core. The machine fell in flames. She staggered back, her leg nearly giving way. But she caught herself, her eyes burned with fury. Another drone dived. She rolled aside, dragging Ethan with her. Her breath came ragged. But she thrust her blade upward, piercing its frame. It exploded, the shockwave throwing her to the ground. Dust filled her lungs. She coughed, shaking. But her grip on the blade never loosened. Ethan, weak but watching, saw her fight. His lips curved in a faint smile. He had given his last breath, but she had found strength in it. In the haze of his fading vision, she looked like a warrior carved from fire and light. 3 drones remained, circling above, calculating. Waiting for the strike, Soraya planted her blade into the ground, using it to push herself up. Her armor was scorched, her leg weak. But her spirit unbroken, she turned her gaze to Ethan, and for the first time, she spoke in his tongue, broken but clear. "You are not weak," she said, her voice steady despite her pain. "Not fragile, not expendable. You are more than they ever said." Ethan's eyes filled with faint light. His chest still heaved. His lips tried to form words, but only a broken whisper came. "Fight." The drones descended together. Their weapons glowing, Soraya raised her blade. Her eyes cold and sharp. The human at her side had already given his final breath. Now it was her turn to decide if his sacrifice would echo into silence or into legend. The warrior's vow, the ruins shook as the last of the drones circled above. Their sensors scanned the broken temple walls, searching for heat, searching for life. Soraya pressed her back against the cracked stone, her blade steady in her hand, her chest heaved, sweat and blood dripping down her face. Her body begged her to surrender, but her heart would not allow it. Beside her, Ethan lay on the cold floor, His breaths were shallow, faint whispers of life. His skin was pale, his lips turning blue. The toxic air was eating him from the inside. His broken mask lay useless at his side. Soraya stared at him, a human who had no reason to fight for her, yet had given his last strength to protect her. In her culture, the Valkyrie believed breath was sacred. A warrior's final breath belonged to the stars. Yet this human had given his to her freely, without hesitation. For the first time in her life, Soraya felt shame. Her people had called humans weak, unworthy, lesser. But in this broken soldier, she saw more strength than in entire armies. She clenched her blade tighter. Her voice trembled but grew strong. "By my blood, by my honor. I will not let you die in vain," she swore. Her words echoed softly in the ruined temple. Like a vow carved into the stone itself, the drones descended, humming louder. Their red eyes glowed through the smoke, calculating the kill. Soraya dragged Ethan's body deeper into the shadows, every movement tearing at her wounded leg. The pain was sharp, but she ignored it. She laid him gently against the altar stone, then turned to face the machines. Her blade gleamed in the dim light, cracked but still deadly. She raised it high, her stance firm. For the first time, she was not fighting for glory, not for her people, but for him, the fragile human who had shown her what true courage meant. The first drone dived. Soraya leapt forward. Pain burning through her leg, she spun her blade, slicing the machine clean in two. Sparks lit the shadows. Metal clanged against the ground. Her breath came ragged, but her eyes blazed. 2 drones remained. They hovered low, releasing a barrage of plasma fire. Soraya ducked behind the altar stone, shielding Ethan's body with her own. The blasts scorched the wall, shards of rock tearing across her armor. She gritted her teeth, blood running down her arm. Her body screamed to collapse, but her vow held her upright. Ethan's hand twitched. His fingers brushed the ground as if trying to reach her. His eyes fluttered open just for a second. He saw her fighting, his voice no louder than a whisper, slipped from cracked lips. "Don't stop." Soraya turned, her heart tightening at his words. She nodded once, her voice fierce. "I won't." She dashed from cover. Blade raised, the second drone fired, but she slid low, sparks flying as the plasma struck stone behind her. With a cry that shook the ruins, she drove her blade upward. Piercing the drone's core, it burst apart in fire, heat washing across her skin. The last drone hovered higher, its red eye locked onto her chest. It knew she was weak. It waited for the perfect strike. Soraya stumbled, her blade heavy. Her breath came sharp and uneven. Still, she stood tall, refusing to fall. Her mind flashed back to the moment Ethan had shielded her, his body breaking as he faced death for her. If he could give his breath, she could give her blood. Her teeth bared in defiance, she raised her blade in both hands, ignoring the tremor in her arms. The drone screeched. Firing a beam of searing energy, Soraya roared, charging into its path. Her blade cut through the blast, sparks erupting as steel met fire. She leapt high, striking with all her strength. The blade split the drone in half, its broken shell crashing to the ground in flames. Silence followed. Only the crackle of burning machines and Soraya's heavy breathing filled the air. She dropped to her knees, her body broken but her spirit unshaken. She turned to Ethan, crawling back to him. Her hand touched his chest, feeling the faint beat of his heart. "You gave your breath to me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Now I give you my vow. I will not let you die here, not alone." She lifted him onto her shoulder, pain screaming through her wounded leg. Her armor groaned under the weight, but she carried him step by step into the deeper shadows of the temple ruins. Behind them, the battlefield still burned, but within her chest a new fire burned brighter. Soraya had been saved by a human, and now she had sworn her life to save him. The shelter of ruins. The ruins stretched around them like the bones of forgotten giants. Broken walls leaned against each other. Shattered statues lay in pieces, and the once sacred temple now echoed only with the cries of war. Soraya dragged Ethan deeper inside, her wounded leg trembling with every step. His weight was heavy on her shoulder, but she refused to let him fall. At last, she lowered him against a stone pillar carved with old Valkyrie symbols. Dust and ash covered the carvings, but the warrior knew this place had once been holy. Now it was only a graveyard. She pressed her hand to Ethan's chest, searching for the rhythm of his heart. Faint, weak, but still there. Her breath released in relief. Ethan's eyes opened just enough to see her blurred shape above him. His lips cracked into a faint smile. "You didn't leave me, he whispered. His voice was barely a thread. Soraya's jaw tightened. Her people had abandoned her when she fell wounded. But this human with nothing to gain had refused to abandon her. She shook her head slowly, her voice low but firm. You gave me your life, human. I will not let it end here. She tore a strip from her cloak and wrapped it tightly around her bleeding leg. The pain burned, but it did not matter. Next, she searched her belt for a small crystal vial, a Valkyrie healing draft. Its power was limited, meant for her own kind. Still, she pressed it to Ethan's lips, tilting his head gently. The liquid shimmered faint blue, sliding past his lips. For a moment, nothing happened. His chest rose and fell shallowly. His eyes fluttered closed. Soraya's hands clenched the stone, her heart pounding. Then he coughed weakly, a shudder passing through his body. His breathing grew slightly deeper, fragile but stronger than before. Relief washed over her like rain after fire. The ruins groaned as explosions echoed outside. Enemy patrols swept the battlefield, their voices mechanical, distorted. Searching for survivors, Soraya stiffened, pressing her back against the wall. She listened, each footstep crunching closer on broken ground. If they found them here, neither she nor the human would survive. Ethan stirred, his hand lifting weakly. He gripped her wrist with surprising strength. His voice was faint but urgent. Go. Leave me, you. You can still escape. Soraya's eyes blazed. Her voice cut like steel. No, never. I owe you a vow. And a Valkyrie does not break a vow. She drew her blade silently, her body pressed low, her breath slowed. Her ears tuned to the rhythm of the enemy patrol. Through a crack in the wall, she saw 3 drones floating past, their red eyes glowing. Scanning the ruins, one hovered closer, its sensors sweeping the dark. Soraya gripped her weapon tighter, ready to strike if they entered. The drone paused, its light shining across the stone floor, inches from where Ethan lay. Soraya's hand pressed gently over his chest, willing him to stay silent. Her own breath stilled. The machine hummed, then turned away, following the others into the smoke. The danger passed for now. She lowered her blade, her body trembling. The exhaustion pressed down on her like chains, but her spirit refused to yield. She turned back to Ethan, brushing the dirt from his face. His skin was burning hot, fever rising from the poison in his lungs. The healing draft had bought him time, but not much. Her mind raced. The Valkyrie had a ritual, an ancient act of sharing breath. It was sacred. Done only between bonded warriors, to share breath was to share life. It was forbidden to give it to an outsider. Yet here she was, watching a human slowly fade, a human who had already given his last breath for her. She leaned close, whispering softly, You gave everything for me, and I will break any law, any vow, to return it. Her hand reached for the small breathing device attached to her armor, a mask designed for Valkyrie lungs. She adjusted it, her fingers shaking, and placed it against his lips. Her own mouth connected through the device. She exhaled, sharing her air. Her life with him. Ethan's chest rose, his body shuddering as fresh oxygen filled his burning lungs. His eyes fluttered open, confusion mixing with fragile relief. He saw her face close to his, their breaths connected. For the first time since the battle began, his pain softened. Soraya pulled back slowly, her own chest aching from the loss of air. Her lips trembled. She had broken the greatest rule of her people. But in her heart she knew it was right. She whispered, almost to herself, Your breath will not end here, human. Not while mine remains. Outside, the battlefield still roared. The ruins trembled with the weight of war. But in that broken temple, beneath shattered stone and sacred vows, a fragile bond was forming, stronger than any weapon. Soraya had taken his fight as her own, and in that vow, the human's final breath was no longer his alone. It was theirs, shared between warrior and soldier, alien and man. The shared breath. The ruins were quiet for a moment. Only the crackle of distant fire and the faint sound of falling stone filled the air. Ethan leaned back against the pillar, his chest rising and falling more steadily. The alien device pressed to his lips had given him strength he should not have had. His eyes opened wider now, confusion mixing with gratitude. Soraya sat across from him, her armor scorched, her breathing heavy. Her face was pale but her gaze sharp. She had broken the most sacred vow of her people. She had shared her breath with an outsider for the Valkyrie. That act was more binding than any blood oath. It meant trust beyond life and death. It meant their lives were no longer separate. Ethan tried to speak, his voice still rough. "What?" "What did you do?" Soraya lowered her head, her voice steady but soft. "I gave you my breath, human. That means my strength is your strength now. My life is tied to yours until the stars burn out. Your survival is mine." Ethan blinked at her. His chest still ached, but his spirit felt lighter. He wanted to laugh, but no sound came. Instead, he whispered, "Then, I guess we're partners." For the first time since the war began, Soraya's lips curved into the smallest smile. It vanished quickly, but it was there. Their moment was broken by a low hum. The ruins trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling as the ground shook. Enemy patrols were back, heavier this time. The drones were not alone. Metal footsteps echoed through the haze. Soldiers. Armored machines designed for war. Soraya rose slowly, her blade gripped in both hands. Her leg was still weak, but her stance was strong. She looked at Ethan, who struggled to push himself upright. His hand reached for his rifle, though it was battered and near empty. "You cannot fight," Soraya said firmly. "Your lungs are poisoned. Your strength is fading." Ethan coughed but forced a grin. "Doesn't matter, I'll fight anyway." Soraya's eyes narrowed. She admired his spirit, yet her vow weighed heavier. She had sworn to keep him alive, and now that vow meant more than her own pride. She placed her breathing device back onto his lips. Exhaling into it, the warmth of her breath filled him again. He inhaled deeply, and color returned faintly to his face. When she pulled back, her voice was low but burning. "Then we fight together as one breath, one life." The first of the armored soldiers stepped into the ruins. Towering machines with glowing blades of energy. Their red sensors locked onto Soraya and Ethan instantly. Their voices buzzed, cold and metallic. "Target located. Eliminate!" Soraya dashed forward, her blade flashing. The clash of steel and energy filled the ruins. Sparks lit the broken walls as she struck down the first soldier. But two more closed in, surrounding her. Her arms shook with each block, each strike. She could not face them alone. Ethan raised his rifle. Forcing his trembling hands to steady, he pulled the trigger. A blast rang out, striking one of the machines in its chest. The armor cracked, the soldier staggered. Soraya seized the moment, driving her blade through its core. The machine collapsed in fire. The third turned toward Ethan, its weapon charging. Ethan coughed, barely standing, his vision blurred. He knew he could not move fast enough, but before the strike came, Soraya threw herself in front of him. Her blade clashed against the machine's weapon. The force hurled her back, her armor sparking. She hit the ground hard. Ethan dropped to his knees beside her. His chest burning, his voice broke. Don't give up." Her eyes met his, dark and fierce. "I will not. Not while you still breathe." With the last of her strength, she shoved the breathing device back to his lips. Their breaths mingled again, his lungs filled with borrowed life. His arms steadied. He raised his rifle and fired one final shot. The blast tore through the machine's head, sparks flying as it collapsed beside them. Silence returned, broken only by their gasping breaths. The ruins smelled of smoke and melted steel. Ethan leaned against the pillar again. His chest heaving, Soraya sat beside him, her blade resting across her lap. For a long moment, neither spoke. They had faced death together and lived, not because of strength alone, but because their breaths had become one. Ethan turned his head toward her, his voice weak but certain. "If we keep doing this, we might just make it out alive." Soraya looked at him, her expression unreadable, but inside her chest, something new stirred, something her people would never understand. A bond formed not by blood, but by breath. A bond that would change everything. The final stand, the ruins were quiet for only a breath. Then the ground rumbled louder than before. The flames outside painted the sky orange. Shadows stretched across the broken temple walls as more machines approached. Their heavy steps echoed like drums of death. Ethan leaned against the stone pillar, his chest rising with sharp gasps. The shared breath had given him strength, but it was only borrowed. His lungs still burned, his body was failing. Yet his eyes were sharp, steady. He knew the end was near. But he refused to let fear win. Soraya stood beside him, her silver blade glowing faintly. Her armor cracked and her blood stained the floor. But her spirit had not broken. She looked at Ethan and saw not weakness but fire. The human had already given his last breath for her. Now she felt the weight of her vow heavier than ever. Through the haze, the enemy appeared. 5 armored soldiers and a swarm of drones filled the temple entrance. Their red eyes glowed in the dark. Their voices boomed. Target confirmed. Resistance will be eliminated. Ethan forced himself upright, his rifle heavy in his hands. His voice was hoarse but strong. Guess they don't want to let us leave. Soraya stepped forward, raising her blade. Then they will fall before us. The first wave charged. The clash was instant. Soraya's blade carved through two drones. Sparks rained as their broken shells crashed to the ground. Ethan fired his rifle, each shot tearing into the swarm. But his hands trembled. His vision blurred. Still he kept shooting, each pull of the trigger defying the poison in his lungs. One of the armored soldiers swung its glowing weapon at Soraya. She blocked, sparks flying. The force sent her stumbling back. Ethan lifted his rifle and fired into its chest. The armor cracked. Soraya struck again, cutting it down. They moved like one. Every strike, every shot flowing together. But the machines did not stop. Another soldier leapt forward. Striking Ethan across the chest, he fell hard against the stone. His mask clattering across the floor, his breath caught, his lungs screaming. Soraya's eyes widened, fury blazing. She threw herself at the machine, driving her blade deep into its head. The metal giant fell, sparks exploding around her. She dropped to Ethan's side, lifting his head gently. His eyes flickered, his lips pale. His voice came in broken whispers. It's ending, Soraya." Her heart clenched. She shook her head, her voice trembling. "No, not yet, you still breathe, and as long as you breathe, I will fight." The last three machines advanced, their weapons glowing, their steps slow and certain. Soraya's grip on her blade tightened. Her body swayed with exhaustion, but she stood tall. Ethan reached for her wrist. His hand weak but steady, his voice rough. "Together," she looked into his eyes and nodded. Her voice low but fierce. "Together." They rose side by side. Ethan with his broken rifle, Soraya with her cracked blade. The enemy charged. Their roars shook the ruins. Ethan fired until the rifle clicked empty. He swung it like a club, striking the drones from the air. Soraya slashed through steel and fire, her blade singing with every strike. One machine fell, then another. The last towered over them. Its blade raised high. Ethan stepped forward, placing himself between Soraya and the strike. His chest heaved, his voice breaking but certain. "Not her. Me." The weapon came down, but before it could strike, Soraya's roar filled the temple. She leapt, her blade cutting in a blazing arc. The machine split apart, collapsing into fire and smoke. The ruins shook as silence returned. Only their ragged breaths remained. Soraya fell to her knees, her blade clattering beside her. Ethan dropped against the stone, his body limp, his eyes fluttered. His breath faint, she crawled to him, pressing her hand to his chest. The beat of his heart was there, but fading. Her throat tightened, her voice broke as she whispered, "Stay with me, human, stay." Ethan's lips moved. His voice was a ghost. You made it worth it." Soraya bowed her head. Her hand pressed over his heart. Her vow echoed inside her. If his final breath was fading, then hers would carry it. She would not let his story end in silence. The battle was over, but the war inside her had just begun. A new legacy. The temple ruins smoldered in silence. Smoke curled through the broken walls, carrying with it the bitter scent of war. Soraya knelt beside Ethan. His body slumped against the cold stone. His breaths were shallow, fading, each one weaker than the last. She pressed her hand against his chest, feeling the fragile beat of his heart. It was slipping away. Her own lungs burned, her wounds heavy, but she ignored them. Her vow was louder than her pain. She leaned close, whispering fiercely, "Do not leave me, human. You gave me your breath. Now I give you mine again and again until the stars fall." She pressed the breathing device back to his lips, exhaling into it with all the strength she had left. His chest rose, shuddered, then fell again. His eyes flickered open, his gaze locking with hers. For a moment it felt like the universe stood still. His voice was barely a whisper. You saved me." Soraya shook her head, her silver eyes burning. "No, Ethan, you saved me. You saved more than me. You saved my honor, my spirit, my people's pride. You gave me what no Valkyrie ever had, the truth of courage." The temple shuddered as distant explosions echoed through the battlefield. More soldiers would come, Soraya knew. She could not hold them off, not alone, not like this. She looked at Ethan, so fragile in her arms, and made her choice with trembling strength. She lifted him onto her shoulder. Each step was agony, her legs screaming, blood dripping across the broken floor. Yet she moved one foot after another, carrying him out of the ruins and into the burning night. The battlefield stretched endlessly, fire and smoke rising into the sky. Valkyrie survivors stumbled through the wreckage. When they saw Soraya, their eyes widened. She, the warrior once abandoned, now carried a human in her arms. They whispered among themselves, their voices sharp. A human? She carries a human soldier. Why protect him?
Why dishonor yourself with his kind?
Soraya stopped, her chest heaving. Her voice rose above the whispers, strong and unshaken. This human gave his last breath to save me. He stood where none of you stood. He fought when my strength was gone. He gave everything with nothing asked in return. The Valkyrie warriors fell silent, their gazes uncertain. No one spoke against her, for in her eyes burned a fire they could not deny. She laid Ethan down gently on a slab of stone, lifting her blade high. By my vow, by his sacrifice, I declare him no longer weak, no longer expendable. This human carries the spirit of a Valkyrie warrior. His courage is greater than blood, greater than breath. The warriors looked at Ethan. Broken yet alive, they saw not fragility but resilience, not weakness but strength. Slowly, heads bowed, a silent respect spread through them. Ethan coughed weakly, his eyes half closed. His voice cracked as he looked at Soraya. They don't hate me. Soraya knelt beside him, placing her hand gently over his chest. Her voice was soft but fierce. They will never again call your kind weak, not after you. Your final breath has become our legacy. She turned her gaze to the sky, smoke swirling into the stars in her heart. She knew Ethan's body might not survive the night, but his spirit already lived on, not only in her but in every Valkyrie who had witnessed this moment. The human soldier who should have been forgotten on a battlefield was now remembered. His story whispered, his sacrifice carved into the memory of an entire race. Soraya bowed her head close to his, whispering the final words of her vow. Even if your breath fades, Ethan Cole, it will not be the end. You will live in my strength, in my blade, and in the stars themselves. The night roared with fire, but within the broken heart of war, a new legend was born. A human had given his last breath and in return gained eternity.